Oh, good grief. Okay. Make sure we're on. See if anyone's going to come and join us today. There I am. Yay! Oh wow, it's really delayed. It's like freaking. As you're coming on, say hi. And if you're watching the replay, #replay. Just waiting for the beautiful Maya to join me. As you can see, I've just got out of the shower. It's been a busy little morning, even though I've been up since 5. Oh, goodness me, what's going on here? It's really funny because in this one, my hair's that way. And then in this one, my hair's the other way because I've got the phone just so I can check messages where you guys are messaging and everything. So it's quite funny. It's like I've got a mirror vision of me going on. So it's a little bit distracting, but that's okay. It's almost like I feel like I need to flick my hair over the other side because it's gone on the... Anyway, whatever. Okay, where are we? There's the beautiful Michelle. She's probably going, oh my God, woman, stop playing with your hair. And put me on. It was weird, okay? Hello, gorgeous. Now, there seems to be a slight delay today, but that's okay. We're going to... I just noticed that when I went live, it was like 2 minutes before it actually came on, probably while I was still stuffing around with my hair. Anyway, as you're coming on, say hi, guys. I can see there's people here. There's not any comments that are coming up as yet. Say hi and #replay if you're watching the replay so we know that you've watched it. Today, the beautiful Maya and I are going to do the mind. And it's one of my favorite subjects. Oh, here we are. They're all coming up here. Why are they coming up there? She's copied me with her hair. I did too. I went and changed it. That's why it's all wet. Because like we did a test and then I was like, no, she can't look better than me today because she's looking freaking stunning. So I had to go and do it. Cheeky shit. It happened every morning at the retreats as well. I'd be like, what's she wearing first? Okay, I gotta go look better. Just joking. It was too early for that. Oh, right. Okay, so to start this off, morning, Tracy. I can't see for some reason oh, here we go. They're coming up now. It's too early for that. Oh, right. Oh God. Hey, Tracy. Hey, Hannah. Hey, Bex. Hey, everybody that's joining us. We're going to get into it now because we've noticed that we're going way over our supposed half an hour to 40 minutes. This is going to be a really beautiful one. It's going to be one that's around the mind. And the reason why we went to the mind next is it's just a beautiful, it's a beautiful moving into the next part of our body once our hearts are opened. So I'm actually going to pass it on to the divine Maya, and she's going to really talk about what we're going to be chatting about moving forward today.
So welcome everyone. It's really great to be back and to be connected with all of you again today. So yes, as Lisa mentioned, today we went through a couple of days speaking about the heart. We thought really long and hard about the progression of how we want to present this material to you. And today, as we talk mind, the first thing we're going to look at is how we're going to understand the Earth's mind and what's going on in the context of this situation. The next thing we will do is we will define and identify our own minds in the context of this situation. And then the last thing that we will do is we will become curious and observant about the mind. So we will teach you different ways through our own experience how you can become curious and more observant about your mind. Okay, so I'm going to begin by giving you a little bit of context about the Earth's mind right now. So what I've been feeling, what I've been observing, reading, watching, downloading, connecting with Lisa as well, is that, let's see, so the earth bind is right now, what does give you a metaphor? And I want also to give some definition and feedback also about the earth. So Mother Earth and her infinite wisdom, her infinite intelligence, is not to be underrated and much involved in what's happening right now. So as we spoke about in the last 2 days, we spoke about how interesting it is during this situation that we've had many different pandemics in the history of mankind, and how particular this one is, because this one, no matter where, for Westerners who tend to have increased hygiene situations, which is our main defense against pandemics. It's changed our abilities as humans to control bacterial infection and viruses. It's actually been because we introduced plumbing and hygiene, and that's the reason why humans live so much longer, But the intelligence of Mother Earth and her mind, she has introduced to us a virus and a situation that not only attacks the human body, but has actually attacked the human psyche. And all of us in the last couple of days, we have all this situation, whether it has been physically by the virus, or physically because we are in countries where there's martial law, lockdown, or there's some restriction to social movement, individual movement and social movement, or they're on the situation, on the psyche, mental mind, the emotional mind. So we've all been touched by this, and this is Mother Earth. This is Mother Earth's intelligence. This is her wake-up call to us. Now, what I'd like for you to imagine is, imagine in your area, or maybe you know of a place, an abandoned parking lot, abandoned supermarket, or an abandoned office building, some place that used to be highly populated, and now for the last years, no one's gone there. All the shops are closed. It's completely abandoned, or maybe it's an abandoned hotel. Whatever. You to think about what happens in those spaces. What happens to the parking lot? What happens to the structure? Mother Nature begins to come back. She begins to grow her vines and her roots. The animals, the tarmac of the parking lot break up. Mother Nature begins to reclaim that area, reclaim things, reclaim any cars that are left. You've seen internet of abandoned cities or abandoned villages, and growth of Mother Nature will come in. I'm getting cut out, so funny. Okay, I hope you guys didn't get that too. So I want you to look at that and feel and understand that connection. Those situations of when humans have abandoned a specific place will just very it's not aggressive, it's just a very easy slow progression of reclaiming a space that needs to be, that actually needed abandoned and needed transition and transformation. That's in essence what I've been getting. This situation, what is happening is that we have thought patterns, we have behaviors, we have systems in place. We have different things that have been decades, and our reactions, our responses to these things have been inadequate, and the systems, the thought patterns, the behaviors, and so what Mother Nature has done in Mother Nature is to send out these armies and insects and animals to reclaim the territory. And we want to surrender to this, and to allow her to help us to create something that is much more humane. It's much more earth-centric. It's much more obviously, and it's time really to surrender and abandon a lot of these patterns, instinctual responses, and let go and move forward. And so that's pretty much just the whole view of where these next 2 days, as we speak to you and we speak about our minds. This is the context that I would like to begin to relate to and to understand that mine in this situation with this virus, it's like this virus, this viral growth is slowly creeping into the psyche of everyone in its own way, or the physical integrity of our bodies, or it's creeping into our habitual movements and patterns. But at any rate, it's affecting all of us. And this is the metaphor I wanted to give you so that you could have just a better view and a better understanding to what you are surrendering to and what you can actually breathe to and move along with any resistance, with ease and with joy, because there's a trust to this surrendering, and everything's going to be just fine. I'm getting chills as I say that, but really there is a trust, there's a faith to this surrendering, this overgrowth in this the earth mind. And what we're going to do now is we're going to identify. Oh, I forgot. Lisa always does this and I forget. So if any of this is resonating with you right now, I saw like some hearts and things going on that this is interactive. So is any of this resonating with you all? I hope so. Give some heart likes and let us know if this is connecting with you, if you're getting any signs, if there are birds singing, or to you, if you're getting movements. I'm getting with this. Lisa, is there any that?
Sorry, you just cut out. What was that?
All good. All good.
Yeah. You know,
we're going to move into.
Sorry, I was just going to say I really resonated with that. I love the way that you use the building with what's happening within our mind and how we can actually start to understand it and understand what the growth that's coming in, and how, you know, beautiful analogy. I loved it. Do you want me to go into my? I'll just keep flying. So I'm not.
Oops.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna keep flying because mine's
just a little bit of.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, guys, it is cutting in and out a little bit.
Like a 6-second connection, and so we're trying to figure out when to talk.
It's like, it's my turn. And you know, I'm going to tell you that Maya is. She's very new to lives, and I think she's now got 6 under a bat, and now I just can't shut her up. I tell you, when she flows, she's just off, and I'm like, which is just so beautiful to watch. So yeah, for me, like, it was really resonating what you were saying, and when we go into the I'm just going to mute you out so there's no background. When we go into the, you know, where is the mind right now? What state is it actually sitting at? You know, what emotions are we attaching to the mind right now with our thoughts? You know, we have lots and lots of thoughts about different things that are happening right now. And really what transpires within our body, within our mind, within our soul, within our whole being is what emotion we're actually attaching. What emotion we're actually attaching to what actually thought we're having. And they really have, it's like your emotions and your thoughts, because it's coming through to me, it's like they do a dance, and it's like they do a weave, and depending on which way you go to, is which way you're actually going to be emotionally, whether you're going to go into a beautiful state of understanding, whether you're going to go into a gorgeous state of being curious, or whether you're going to go into the emotional states of the negative emotions that come through because you're not understanding what's happening. So as we're doing this dance of understanding within ourselves, and as Maya said, you know, so much is changing right now within us. We're going through what I'm actually calling a whole rebirth. I mean, Mother Earth is definitely, she's a lot ahead of us, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. You know, she's in the absolute rebirth stage where we're still trying to work out in our minds how to weave what's going on. Are we in crises? Are we healing? You know, where is the mind going? So it's to me, it's like a dance. And if we can go into a state of being aware with more of a beautiful, gentle feeling, rather than going into, oh my God, what am I thinking? What the hell's going on? What's happening there? What's it? You know, we can actually take it back into our body. We can actually start to understand what the mind's doing and where our thoughts can go. And the biggest thing right now is that we need to get so super curious about and be really observant about what's going on. We need to take it away from trying to really be in a state of judging or analyzing or that, you know, oh my God, I've got to understand, why the hell am I feeling like this? Why is that person doing that? And you know, and stop ourselves from going into our old coping mechanisms, from how we would usually react in a stage like this. For me, you know, my coping mechanism was frustration. I would go, when anything wasn't coming quite right, when my feelings weren't aligning to my thoughts, when I was getting into my body of you know, well, where's my mind right now? What the hell's happening? Why is it going this way when I actually want to go that way? So I was doing that dance instead of coming together. So my mind and my feelings and my body and everything were going in different ways. My go-to emotion was frustration. Every single time I knew something was up if I was in that frustrated stage. So if you guys have got a go-to emotion, I would love you to type it down. What is your go-to emotion when things aren't quite gelling, when something's not quite right and your mind's going, oh God, what the hell? And it's getting some anxiety, and it's getting some frustration, it's getting some anger. What's your go-to emotion? So for me, when, as I was saying, you know, when you attach the emotion to what your thoughts are, is what your desired outcome will be within yourself. And when we go to a state of not understanding it, we can actually track that emotion in our body. And we'll go through that in the body day. I'm not going to go through that now. But what I want you to do is really flip it right now and go into compassion and understanding. Go into a space of, okay, so I'm going to get really curious about where my mind is right now and why it's going where it's going. I'm going to put my energy into understanding and awareness rather than trying to analyze the hell out of it. So I bring up more emotions and I end up just, well, for me, it was frustration, which would then lead to anger, it would then lead to overwhelm, it would then lead to the cloudy brain, the disillusion. It had all these different things from that one little emotion that would come up because I wasn't understanding what was happening. I wasn't doing the dance, I was doing this. And when we have a lot of this in between, it's really hard to get back to the stage of getting back into your mind, to get into that curious stage, to get into that observant stage, to get into that stage where you can really detach yourself from the emotion and go, okay, what's going on? What's going on right now? And we've both got, Maya and I we spoke about this yesterday, and we've both got a beautiful story to share around it. And for me, and also the other thing that can happen is that right now it's so easy to go into your old mental coping mechanism, for your neurological pathway to go, okay, so we're not understanding what's going on here now. And what happens is your neurological pathways and your subconscious search for how you actually coped with what's happening in a similar circumstance and it tries to find the way you cope with it, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, or it's fantastic. It tries to find it. And I know for me with my anxiety, if it didn't understand what was going, it would bring on an anxiety attack, because that's the emotion that it quickly attaches to. Okay, so in the past, she's dealt with what's going on here. She would just run. So let's get her to run. Let's get her to switch down. Let's bring up the emotions. Let's get when you have an anxiety attack and you get the shortness of breath and you're feeling hot and everything's, and that emotion was then attached to that feeling. So it exploded. So that was my old pattern. That was my old coping mechanism. So right now, a lot of people are really feeling into having a space of, like, what the hell, where's this coming from? And if you remember on day one, I talked about the anxiety attack I had, and I hadn't had one in 2 years. Well, that was sort of my story, because that was an old coping mechanism for me. My body would cope, not my mind. My mind would cope with it that way, because it went into my neurologic pathways and went, okay, this is how we deal with it. This is how we're going to keep her safe. We're going to keep her safe by doing the fear and the flight. So I would shut down. I'd get really frustrated, really frustrated. I'd get really angry. I get into a state of just wanting to run. And that was my coping mechanism. That was my pattern. So when we can really become curious about why something's actually happening and observe it for what it is, we can start to have those little breakthroughs, and we can start doing that dance with ourselves and really understanding and really coming to terms with what's actually happening in our mind from a curious and observant stage. And I'm just going to unmute Maya, because I know I actually had a little bit of a different story about when I came out of isolation, but I remembered I shared something quite similar on day one. So that for me was what I was really called and just channeled through to share. So Maya, do you have one, honey?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, oops. Okay. Sorry, I'm just listening to the end. It's strange doing this live broadcast. Lisa is about to say to you all before she said it, and then she's like, okay, all right. So anyway, yeah, so Lisa's done like an amazing job to help us all to understand where the mind is, what the mind is for ourselves, and how it's activating for us on an individual level. Now, what we want to do today is we want to give, of course, the context of the earth mind, the context of the individual mind. And then we also want you to understand the context of the collective mind. To talk about with different, when it seems appropriate, is that this collective mind. And we have the collective feminine mind, we have the collective masculine mind, we have collective mind for each nation, we have collective minds regarding religion, culture, we have many different sets of collective minds. World is, and I mean, I'm not going to go into detail into all of these different collective minds, because that isn't the point of today's live. But what is important to talk about specifically with you all is that there is a collective mind that I didn't mention with heart, and that Lisa and I definitely wanted to talk about for this section about the mind. And the collective mind is the collective mind that's empathic. In that collective mind, there are some empaths who have balance, have achieved balance. They are continually working on their healing. There are many empaths, hyper empathic, which person I call it hyper. It's usually when a person grown up in an unstable, had enough healing and enough understanding to pull out of this hyper empathic way of relating to the world, because the hyper empathic that hyper empathic behavior is actually a survival tool. To be hypersensitive to everything around you is a tool. I understand it very well. My hyper empathy was activated for many years. I was constantly connected with everyone around me, to anticipate the emotional states of everyone around me in order to maintain control, safety. That's the way I understood life and how to relate to people. So with this, I hope this is resonating with a lot of you. What happens when hyperempath? Often they have addictive personalities, and often they have addictions that may be socially acceptable or unacceptable. They have addiction to legal drugs or illegal drugs. And again, as we talk about all these things, we talk about everything without any judgment, criticism. We talk everything so that we have an actual map and a way to observe everything that's going on, and that's it. So there's no denial and there's no like leaving one. Instead, we're just going to talk about everything. So to give you a bit more understanding and context, as I said, some people have created these sophisticated coping strategies to deal with the hyperactivity, to deal with all of the emotions that are flooding in them that may be their own emotions that are still not processed and not integrated fully, or perhaps, and most likely, of the emotions of the collective, of all the different collective systems that an individual may be a part of. So let's just talk a little bit so that you can all relate to each other and when we talk about sophisticated mechanisms, talk about addictive behavior. There are addictive behaviors acceptable and unacceptable. So a list of acceptable behaviors, which I have definitely taken a part of for many years. I was an excessive meditator to the point where I was disconnected from my community. I also did excessive sports and yoga to the point where I would injure my body. Other behaviors that are acceptable are, for example, consumerism, like things that one doesn't need. We can move into spaces of overeating, alcohol abuse, which alcohol is an legal drug. Other forms of coping can be use of illegal drugs. Other forms of coping behaviors like behaviors of late and staying out until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, sleeping with multiple partners that the body doesn't really want to sleep with all these different partners. Overworking, workaholism. There are many that we develop to cope and to deal with the of downloading and receive all of this emotional collective information that the world itself actually isn't processing, and hyper empaths get this dumped on them, and then it's coming to me. Another thing is like excessive playing of computer. Another, which is very highly, is social Latin dance, which a lot of. And so the thing that's important to look at right now, and one of you wrote about this in one of your tasks. I think it was Emma who's and she was worried about fulfilling the prescription drugs. So there's a big concern for those of us who are in lockdown and do not have access to sophisticated and particularly the accepted social mechanisms like going to the gym, Going to the gym can be another coping mechanism for this hypersensitivity, this hyper-empathic ability. Excessive workouts, and those are places where we get to connect with others, social setting, but it's safe. There are rules in how we connect with one another, and for hyper-empaths, this can, be a safe place to discharge a lot of this collective emotional energy. I'm not sure if I'm connecting with you all, so give me if this is resonating with you. So these are the identity of the collective mind and where we are right now. In the context of this situation, it's actually it can be a dangerous or a tipping point, because in isolation, in lockdown, those of us who are empathic, those of us who social strategies to kind of dampen and to reduce the effect of emotional processing. If we don't have these tools available to us now, what do we do? And I have really a big concern for my brothers and sisters who are in this space right now. It can be a space of heightened anxiety, heightened overwhelm. It can be a space where the emotional body had so much overload, so much overwhelm of emotions, that there is a sensation and a desire to appear or to dissolve. So particularly for those of you who are moving into that space, we want to ask you to reach out to us with text or with a private message, because we're moving into this space where we do need to help others new strategies down to through it. So I'm just right there. Identify mind and also the communal. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Lisa. As we look at that, we can begin to become very curious in the context of this situation, become very curious of, what are my habitual thought patterns now? What are my habitual mind? How can I become curious about that, about that, and what can my observations teach me? So I'll leave it at that. We've got some personal to help you to process that, and I'll pass it over to Lisa.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Maya. It's funny when you start thinking about all the different, you think your mind's just one thing, but there's just so many different pieces to it. It's like that jigsaw puzzle. It's just, I always say the mind can be the most beautiful place on earth, but it can also be the most scary. It really can. But when we come to a stage, as Maya said, when we can start being really observant, I'm just going to mute. Really observant and really curious about what's actually going on within us. And we can do it from a state of awareness, like that really beautiful, deep awareness of, okay, so I'm an empath. Right now, I'm absolutely heightened. And Jenna Cooper wrote about this in a post. And Maya will go a little bit more into the empath very, very shortly and what's actually happening. When we can understand why we are sitting where we're sitting with no judgment, but just with that real openness to go, okay, so this is what's happening for me right now. What are my coping mechanisms usually? What are my patterns? What are my habitual thoughts? What is my actual state of mind? And we can detach ourselves from it, and we can really decide, are we in a state of healing, or is my mind in a state of crisis? how do I get it to a state of healing? Because that's where you want to be. You don't want to be in a state of not understanding and then having to deal with, I mean, for me, my coping mechanisms were, 6 years ago, I don't know if everybody knows a lot about me. I was a drug addict. I was an alcohol rep. So I had alcohol on tap. My ex at the time was a dealer. So I had, oh my God, I had the freaking everything, and I had I did lots of, I was a sales rep, so I was mostly traveling. And then I became addicted to Valium, because Valium is what helped me through the day from, snorting and doing what I was doing and drinking alcohol to stabilize me, because otherwise I went into that panic and anxiety state. So my old coping mechanisms, thank God I haven't gone back to any of them, which I know I never will. But what I'm trying to say is that was where I used to be. That was how I used to cope, because I had a lot of stuff that was going on that I wanted to numb down. Now that I have moved into the state of realizing that, that an empath is, and where I am, is very heightened. Everything's, and a lot of you, like I would say, most of the people they're in this group are empaths. We feel deeply, and especially when we're in our mind, we try to attach a lot of emotions to what's going on, which is our triggers, which then cause the, everything that we're talking about. So for me, I've moved into a state of being really observant with my mind and asking it what it's actually telling me. Well, what are you actually telling me? Getting really freaking curious. Like, okay, so like when I'll tell you a story. So when I left Bali, I will tell you, I left kicking and screaming. I was absolutely great up until the last day. The last day, I think it was that afternoon, or was it first thing in the morning when it was that afternoon, because of the last day. Everybody had left, and I realized that I had to book my ticket for tomorrow or I wasn't going, because I had to be on the last plane out. And that brought a stage of my mind when it was like a cloudiness in the end, the explosion that you get, and you can't focus on anything. And then the anxiety was building, and I was like, fuck, I've got to leave. I don't want to leave. We had beautiful plans. We were going to Italy, then Croatia to do our next lot of retreats. And it was like, no, this is not fair. And, I allowed my new, which is a really heightened coping mechanism of frustration to come. And Maya just sits back because she knows me so well, and she can just see the process happening. When you know somebody, you can just see it unraveling. You're like, okay, so next she's going to get a little bit of anger. Next she's going to get pissed off. I'll just sit back and wait for that. And you can watch the process of emotions that's happening, because, when somebody knows you so well, they can do it. And, she waited for me to then come back. And when I was like, I'm pissed off. And she goes, okay, let's process it. And so what it did is we sat there and we processed it. I'm pissed off. I feel like I've had my rights taken away from me. I feel out of control. I feel like people are telling me what to do again. All my life, people have told me what to do, and all of this. And my mind was getting into a stage where it started fighting itself, because it didn't know, it didn't know which way to go. So my coping mechanism was to get frustrated, get angry, and shut down. So I had my little, inner child temper tantrum, and Myra and I worked through it. And I realized that, my mind had gone into the primitive mind. My mind had gone into that mind where I needed to go to survival. It was survival. There was no other thing. I had to make decisions I didn't want to make. And I was like a little child. I was stamping my feet, and it was like, okay, so I needed to reconnect back into my heart, which is why we did the heart stuff yesterday, and then to flow onto the mind. And I realized that, I was in a space of crisis instead of a space of healing. So when I shifted through the curiosity and the observation of what was actually going on with no attachment, like I took that total attachment away. Okay, I had to go back. Let's take that attachment away. What's going on right now for me? And I really went into a state of mind of actually being able to deal with it and be able to stop the overwhelm, to stop the self-sabotage, to stop the frustration taking over. And it was beautiful to sit back and watch, though, wasn't it, Maya? Like we'd been in such a euphoric place for the past week. And then it was like that the mind knew that I was now clear for it to take over, because we basically said goodbye to our last divine goddess who left, and it was, okay, here you go, Lisa, woof. And yeah, Maya, you got to.
Yeah, sure. So my own personal stories, like there have been a few times in the last decade where I have literally disconnected completely with my body. Like my coping just wouldn't work for me anymore. So I would say like about a decade ago, I had 4 coping strategies that were really acceptable, and they were kind of like they were a disguise. I thought I was really healthy and really so what I did was the other thing I did is many of you know I'm a nutritionist, so I did a lot of like cooking, healthy cooking, really elaborate dinners and and lunches. Um, and then the is so I practice yoga every single day, 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then the other thing that I would is Tai Chi. And that as well, I practiced every single day, 2 hours a day. One way or another, I would get that because I'm really insomniac, super duper insomniac. So I would wake up every night and I would meditate next to my Himalayan land and all of my deities 30, 40, 50 minutes. So I had all of these practices that were sophisticated coping mechanisms and strategies to help me deal with emotional information that to the outside world, I look like a very healthy, balanced, um, almost even in type of person. Reality was is that I was overusing all of these different strategies just to keep. Well, I think it was in 2012. I'm not sure when. Many of you know that I was in a motorcycle. Actually it was a road accident. I was on a push bike, and there was an enormous Yamaha motorcycle that decided to accelerate down the boulevard, and the boulevard was empty except for me and my little skinny 1980s push bike, and slammed right apart into a billion pieces, and my little thin frail body went flying across the boulevard, and I landed without a helmet on my head and on the right side of my body. So what that did was it was a physical trauma that I endured. Miraculously, I survived with actually, I mean, honestly, the medical doctors, all of the MRIs, all of the X-rays, they all said that I actually had no injury. I did have a lot of psychological injury from that accident, and a lot of nerve damage that wasn't detectable. Um, at any rate, because of the psychological injury, the PTSD, my body began to break down from the shock. And of course, by striking my head on the learned days later that the muscles around my skull, they seized and they had not released. And so I was walking around for days, and my body beat down on me. So what that meant was when my body shut down, I could no longer practice yoga every day. I could no longer practice. I could no longer sit and stand in the kitchen and cook elaborate meals, and I could no longer paint. So all of my sophisticated coping strategies were taken away. Healthy ways of dealing with hyper sensibility taken away from me. And on top of it, I was given a PTSD and a highly dramatic, physically, emotionally traumatic a situation of my own to process, deal with. And so what I did next was I dissociated. I actually just completely from my mind, and I went into this state where I was just going through life, and I most of the time was not in my body. I also was not in my mind. I still, related here and there with people, but most of the time I spent on my own. It was, I went through understanding what was happening, what was going on for me. But I think it was in 2015 or 2014 actually is when it was. I watched the movie Gravity. Gravity was the movie with Sandra Bullock and George. And I was watching the scene where I don't want to give too much of the movie away for any of you who have not seen the movie, but we could also, I mean, why not? We're making this pretty fun. This could be one of your tasks. If you haven't seen the movie, or if you don't remember the movie and it relates to you, if this this resonates to you with you, then it's one of your tasks. So anyway, there's this part in the movie where Sandra Bullock needs to go outside of her space station. And she's on the space station. She's the last survivor of the space station. The space station is floating through. It's about to float through a meteorite, outside the space station, and repair something. She puts her suit on. She's tethered, and she's very quickly repairing everything. Well, not quickly enough, and the meteorites start in, and of course the right punctures her suit. Then she risks dying, being exposed to lack of atmosphere out in space. So her job, and she's trying to get out of this situation. She manages to repair the outside of the space station, and she's heading back in. One of the meteorites hits the cord that where she's tethered to the space station, and she is detached. And so she begins to float away from the space station. As I'm watching this in 2014, it hit me, and I understand what I experienced multiple times, where my mind detaches, or I detach from the mind, I detach body, and basically I have no longer any reference to what's happening for me in life. And so Sandra Bullock, just to give you a real metaphor and a really good understanding, she is like floating away from her space station now, blackness of her only connection to humankind, of getting back to humankind, is the possibility of reconnecting with that space station that has, if she could get back to that space station, be connected to it, she can take off the suit, have her oxygen again, she can her and how she can survive character floating, and what I have been feeling. So I think I just cut out again, so I'll repeat that. When I see Sandra Bullock floating away from the space station, no longer tethered to the space station, she is disconnected from everything. I had this moment, finally understood under so much personal stress, personal trying to process all longer having and no longer sophisticated coping strategies to deal with. I completely disconnected from the mind, from the body, and I had just been floating out in space with no reference to who I was, where I was, just nothing. And so I'm hoping that this story help you to understand that perhaps you are feeling something similar in these circumstances right now, where amongst all of this confusion, amongst all of the multiples of information and disinformation and threatening information, to you, to your family, to your friends, that there may be this sensory overwhelm. There may be emotional overwhelm, that has failure. If you are hyper empathic, there may be a flooding of emotions that is creating an overwhelm. If you are someone who has all of these coping strategies, but you cannot use any of them, you may be under a drastic system overwhelm and moving into the space dissociation connection from the mind and the body, and you make to this feeling of just like there are no reference points. I'm floating out in space, which moves into, as I've read in your many of you moving into these spaces of high anxiety, high overwhelm. So I'm going to just leave it there and let Lisa jump back in, and we'll continue.
So I was just unmuting myself, just in case I wanted to talk. You know how much I love to talk. But I love that analogy, and it's just it's bang on. It's like you feel like you want to go back to all your safety, your security, you know, the things that we all want, you know, and yet you can't quite get back there. It's just detachment, that real detachment. For me, moving on from from what Maya's said and my story, I hope you guys got a real because it's funny, like our stories are completely different. It's like really two beautiful analogies for you to look at, and then from that you can actually really understand where you are right now within your mind from that beautiful curious stage that we spoke about. And this is the task is going to be absolutely aligned to what we're speaking about, of course. And of course now we've just put an extra one in because Maya likes to add tasks as we go. So it's a fun one day. You get to stay on Netflix and just zone out and watch Gravity. But you know, we want to, by sharing our stories, we want to give you, you know, some stories are really, really deep, and some stories are like, oh wow, okay, they really make you think. And that, to me, Maya's one had so many meanings behind it. There were so many things, you know, that you can actually connect with when you step back and go, okay, so she's floating. Okay, so I couldn't use my coping mechanisms. You know, what the hell do? You know, it's what you've always done. It's how you've always coped with something. So your mind just goes, what the fuck is going on? I'm not understanding. I've got nothing to grab to. You know, I know there's some people that are in environments that right now that they're just going, I definitely can't use my normal coping mechanisms, and they're feeling like they're slowly being strangled. You know what I mean? Like they're caged in between these four walls because you haven't got the things that you're used to coping with. You haven't got the ways that you're used to dealing with how you deal with things. Now, it's actually a really beautiful stage as well to start to find out new coping mechanisms, and these new coping mechanisms or these new patterns and the way that you deal with things could actually be really beautiful to introduce. So you could take it away and go, okay, so how can I now use a different form of mind to deal with what I'm going through? How can I learn and this is where the curiosity comes through. This is where the connection, this is where the detachment from actually attaching the emotional feeling to actually what's happening right now. You can go into a beautiful, 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 curious stage of, okay, so what, right in this moment, how could I cope with this? That's going to be something that's really going to help me to thrive instead of help me to be in a state of where I'm being right now. That's going to take me to a state of the curious, the observant, that can then switch me into a new coping mechanism or a new way of dealing with something that's going to help me. That's going to take me from this crisis stage and it's going to take me into a healing stage, because that's where we need to go to. Mother Earth is ahead of us, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow. She is in massive healing at the moment. You look, I was on the phone to Maya last week, I think it was, and I went, holy shit. And I turned my camera around and there were 4 geese and they all had little babies. And then the next day it was a plover with her baby, and then there was the two birds with the baby. I can't remember what birds those, the white and black ones. Like, she's rejuvenating. Everything's rejuvenating on the planet. We're at the moment, we're actually in a stage where we actually did ask for this. We asked to be rebirthed. We asked for the earth to be rebirthed. Probably not the way it is right now and where it's happening, but it is actually a place that we can go into our mind and go, okay, so let's create some space. Let's get rid of these old patterns and behaviors that we have, that we've used to cope. Let's go into a place of creating a new set of beliefs. Let's go into a place of allowing our DNA to rejuvenate, allowing our cellular to regrow, allowing Mother Earth to get at the door. Just this little kid. Sorry, hang on. Just pop it under that, mate, on the phone, mate. I'm on the phone. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, honey. Oh, he's so cute. Oh, he's the most cutest little kid. We're just getting some gas delivered. Sorry, guys. We're actually in a space of cellular regrowth. Have a look at Mother Earth right now. And once again, we're going to go through this tomorrow. She's in that rebirth stage, and that's where we're going. We're just behind her. So collectively, things are really shifting. Collectively, the vibration of the earth is actually rising. And that's another reason why you're so heightened at the moment, is that the energy and the vibration is really, really being lifted. So we're feeling a lot deeper. Our thoughts are a lot more like, wow, what's happening? We're being shown things because we are in a transitional stage ourselves and on Earth, and I'm going in tomorrow, so I'm going to shut up. Mara will be sitting there when we're usually next session to be hitting me. Shush, shush, shush. I always give stuff away. But, and this is what we really want to shift you into. So the first few, we've got 4 tasks today. And the first task is, we really want you to ask yourself, actually, before I get into these, Myra, is there anything else you want to say, sweetheart, before I talk about the task? Sorry. Is there anything you want to add about the rebirthing stage, or the new reprogramming and the paradigms that are coming through, and, the new processing of our emotions? She's like, of course I want to speak. There you go. Might be a little bit delayed.
Go for it.
Go for it? Okay, cool. Sorry, guys, it's just a little bit delayed. So, yeah, so I want you to really take into heart what I just spoke about, and really understand that the more we can process what's happening with us right now, the more room we can create for the rebirth, the more space we can create to actually be able to start to move into a really beautiful state within our mind, and we can clear the clutter.
No, I'm done. Go.
We can clear the clutter. We can clear the confusion, the disillusion, the dismay. We can really clear that within ourselves, and we can actually go within and focus on us and come to a beautiful state of curiosity and awareness. So the task 1 is, and once again, we'll be posting this in the group straight after, so you don't have to write anything down. And the first one is, where, who, what. what am I? Where am I at? What is the reality of my mind right now? Because before we can have a transformation, we have to have an understanding and we have to have an awareness of where we're sitting. So where am I right now? And once again, with no judgment, with no emotional attachment, just curiosity. Wow, okay. Wow, that's interesting. Task 2 is, what about my mind can I observe and be curious about? What do I know and where can I learn? And when you're doing the what do I know and what can I learn, what are the new coping mechanisms I can have? And what are the beautiful ways I can actually now start to switch into a different belief system, into a different understanding, a different neurological pathway about how I'm actually going to deal with something that's happening right now. How can I start to really clear away that clutter? There was something else coming through, but it stopped. Okay. And then the last one, which I don't have on my list, is we want to do a lot of what we did in the first 2 days. We want you to get curious. We want you to get really super curious about your mind with the no emotional attachment to it. Oh, and then also watch Gravity, the movie with Sandra Bullock, and really have a look at that scene that Maya was talking about, and really feel into, even pause it in that moment when she's detaching and she's looking at that cord, because at the moment, a lot of us are cutting cords. Acacia records are going. There's a lot of shifts, there's a lot of paradigms, a lot of timelines that we're having to move really fastly onto as the other ones are dissipating, keep going away, and we have no control over it. So really think about that when you're watching the Gravity. Okay, so what timeline am I on right now? What one can I actually switch to? Where do I actually want to be? Where do I actually want to go to? It's almost like the transition's happening, and it's happening so fast. It's happening really, really fast because we're having to clear and we're having to make space for the actual rebirthing process to happen within ourselves. It's actually really beautiful when you can get to a stage of really being the grounded and balanced and going, wow, okay, well, let's get curious. So that's your tasks. So Maya and I really want to say thank you for coming on. We can't go under an hour. It's just the facts now. We've just got so much to share with you, and this is just the start of what we do. I mean, you're getting a beautiful taste of the expansive and gorgeous work that Maya and I do, and I really honor you for being so vulnerable and playful and just being here with us every day, just to open yourselves up to really reshaping what's actually going on and starting to transition onto a different state of mind, a different state of the heart. And we're doing the body and the body and the soul next, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is day 2 of the mind. Same time, same place. Set the TV for it. Get ready. It's going to be a really beautiful one as well. So if you have any questions, as always, type them and we'll come back. We don't have time to answer them now because we are going way over what we said we would. But Maya and I are just loving watching the posts that are coming through on the page, and we really honour you for being so open and sharing. And as we always say, you can even just do one line. You don't have to do everything. But to get into the state of vulnerability that we spoke about in the first 2 days, because that's where the deep growth is going to happen. So thank you so much for showing up. Maya, is there anything you'd like to say, beautiful? Really delayed. No, I'm going to leave it there. I think she's good. So if you're watching the replay, make sure you let us know if there's anything you need. And if there's anything you need right now as well, type it below. We're here. We really hold the space for you to be able to be extremely vulnerable so that we can help. Okay, cool. So sending you all so much love, and we will see you tomorrow, and keep those tasks coming, guys. If you're getting slightly behind, don't worry. Remember, there's about 11 days still to go, so it doesn't matter. If you're starting today, it doesn't matter. Just start moving through them. Start watching the first day ones live, and just start moving through them at your own pace. It's not a matter of getting them done and getting into a hurry. So sending you all so much love and lots of new light and big hugs. Mwah. See ya.